What is going on, everybody? I've been a diehard Pistons fan since 2003, and I'm eager to see this team getting back to playing winning basketball. In today's video, we have some breaking news, and that is that Paul Reed has signed with the Detroit Pistons. In this video, we are going to talk about his fit with the team, and towards the end of the video, I'm going to let you know if I like the signing or not. Now, before we get onto it, we just crossed over the 1,000 subscriber mark yesterday, and we're already at 1,200. So if you guys are new here, please subscribe. The support, it's been greatly appreciated and honestly shocking. So thank you all for everyone who already has. So Paul Reed has agreed to a 3-year deal with the Detroit Pistons worth $24 million in total for an average of $8 million per year. Who is Paul Reed? Paul Reed was drafted by the 76ers in 2020 with the 58th overall pick at the very end of the draft. Since his time in the NBA, he has spent 4 years with the Philadelphia 76ers, with the most recent year being the one where he was able to contribute the most, playing about 20 minutes per game. Of course, Joel Embiid was out for big portions of the year, so Paul Reed, being a big man, did slot into a lot of those minutes. Last year, Paul Reed averaged 7.3 points per game, with 6 rebounds and a block per game in 19.5 minutes of action. So straight away, what that tells us is 1 block per game in 19 minutes of action is a higher block average than what Jalen Duren had in a starter's role. So a lot of Pistons fans were very concerned with our rim protection and our big depth. I think he is going to solve 2 of those problems, at least to some degree. I think that Paul Reed, at 24 years old, is a pretty good signing at $24 million per year for 3 years. That means we're going to have him for his 25th, 26th, and 27th year old seasons, unless we trade him, of course, but he should be coming into his prime right about now. Paul Reed does have some limitations on the offensive end. He's not exactly a shooter. He is a bit undersized for a true center, but a lot of that is outweighed by the fact that he has a high motor, super kind of gritty player, not exactly a finesse center or like a skilled big, I guess you could say. Of course, everyone in the NBA is skilled to some level, but you get what I mean in today's NBA. So that's kind of the identity that Paul Reed brings. He, of course, was teammates with Tobias Harris last season in Philadelphia, so we have now stolen 2 players from the Philadelphia 76ers. An interesting note here is Paul Reed was actually offered a contract last offseason by the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz offered Paul Reed a contract that was pretty similar to the one that the Pistons just signed him to as a restricted free agent, and he did go ahead and sign that. But there was a weird thing in there where the contract wasn't guaranteed past a year unless the team made the second round of the playoffs. So the 76ers matched that, and then the 76ers failed to make the second round of the playoffs, which then made his contract unguaranteed going forward. The Philadelphia 76ers then waived Paul Reed because they were trying to create as much cap space as possible in order to acquire Paul George this offseason. So other teams, I guess, felt comfortable last year about offering this type of money to Paul Reed. At least the Utah Jazz and 76ers both did. And statistically, he's only improved from that point forward. So I feel pretty good about the money that we have given to Paul Reed here. How does Paul Reed fit into the rotation? So the Pistons up until today only had 2 bigs on the roster with Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. And I actually recorded a video earlier today about the Pistons, who they could go get for a backup big. So I have to delete that video now. That's not going to get uploaded. But I was talking in that video about Paul Reed, and he was pretty much the obvious choice. When you look at who's left on the market, there's Precious Achiuwa and Mike Muscala. Those are a couple of the bigs left, but it's just kind of like something that you could almost see coming because it's just a really good fit overall. The money's right. The need is there. We have cap space. All of that stuff makes a lot of sense. But what I am curious about is how the rotation is going to work now. Because we did get Tobias Harris. So Tobias Harris is going to be our starting 4 most likely, with Jalen Duren being our starting 5. And I thought that meant that maybe Isaiah Stewart would slot in as our backup 5. Isaiah Stewart probably won't be our backup 5 anymore because that's probably going to be Paul Reed, which means that Isaiah Stewart will probably become the backup power forward. I was excited to see some Isaiah Stewart at center minutes, especially off of the bench, but I just think that that's probably not going to happen as much now, even though it might happen every now and again. I think that Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed together off the bench could bring a pretty interesting dynamic, as both are pretty strong dudes, pretty physical dudes. Kind of could be like a energy big swap off the bench that brings you something that's pretty different than what you're going to get from Tobias Harris and Jalen Dern in the front court, assuming that's who starts. So things have gotten pretty interesting this offseason. We've added a lot of new players. Of course, drafted Ron Holland and Bobby Klintman. We've went ahead and added Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, and Paul Reed. So the roster is starting to look pretty fresh, and overall the depth is starting to come together a lot better. Let me know what you guys think about the signing. Overall, like I said, I think it was just kind of the obvious choice when you consider who was left on the free agency market, when you consider our needs. I think a lot of it just made sense. I could almost see this coming. I think that right now, this is the right move. I think the contract is right. I'm just kind of curious to see how the rotation plays out now with our backup bigs. So let me know what you guys think. We'll talk soon.